I think FIRE has evolved.
Absolutely.
It is definitely it's in a new phase of it. Now, I love that some of the content creators that we follow are part of this update to the movement that's given it a lot more purpose, beginning with the end in mind, not only on the financial stuff, but also the abundance thoughts that need to go into it. Can we talk about what has changed and where are we headed?
Yeah, right now, we used to think, okay, financial independence, retire early. It's a singular thing. But now it's way more customized. There's fat financial independence. There's skinny financial independence. There's coast financial independence. There's barista financial independence. There's slow financial independence. So there are ways that this movement has now customized, recognizing that there is more than just this one-size-fits-all approach. There has to be something a little more custom so that my situation, what I'm looking for, is actually reflected in the plan that I have. I mean, one of the things that I think is so great, so often the FIRE movement got focused on what am I leaving behind, what's behind me, what's behind me, what's behind me. One of the ways we think that's evolved really, really well is that it's now focused on what's next.
Yeah, and that's what it's now leaning into the mental, psychological, the behavioral, all the things of what you're going to versus just having that math calculation of what you can do to leave your work. And what I like when I talk about the leaders, and the new name for this is that's starting to evolve, is financial independence next endeavor.
The FINE movement.
Yeah, the FINE movement.
Which way better than
and look, there's been, and I want to give some shout outs because I think FINE was coined by Jill Schlesinger.
Jill Schlesinger,
and then the other thing that, and y'all heard me give the shout out to this because we of course know these guys, and I've had conversations with Jason. He has financial independence, recreational employment. So he still he kept the outline of FIRE, but he pivoted on the retire early to the recreational employment. These things, and what I love is they're focusing on where you're going to, the plan of who you are, the purpose, the abundance. So that's why this is nice. This is positive that we're seeing these people give the elements, the experience shares of how to do this the right way.
And what I love is this is not a new concept. This is what we have been counseling our clients through for the last 20 years. This is ultimately what they've been working towards, whether it was retirement at 45, 50, 55, 60, 65. It was less about the thing that they were leaving. It was more about building up an abundant amount of resources where whatever their next endeavor was, they were prepared for that and they knew what that was. Maybe it was volunteering. Maybe it was career 2.0. Maybe it was figuring out whatever those things are. It's something that we've been saying since the beginning of the firm. And I think now the financial independence retire early movement has begun adopting to that. Okay, it's not just about being young and unemployed. It's about being young and in control of what I'm doing for my next station, next chapter in life.
Yeah, financial independence, owning my time that much sooner. That's where it's at. So let's talk about why FINE. We've believed about the purpose, paying less, but you'll need to know a way to cover your income. And I think this leads to where all of you analytical people, you're going to love this. We're essentially giving you an all-you-can-eat buffet of what are these steps or the math of the situation so you can have a successful FINE adjustment.
So FINE adjustment, I like that. So here's what step one is. You have to know how much you need to cover. You need to understand if you are thinking about financial independence and your next endeavor, odds are when you move to this next endeavor, your circumstances are going to change. Maybe your income goes away altogether, or maybe it doesn't. Maybe your income just goes down $25,000, $50,000, maybe it cuts in half. Well, you need to understand that if I want to maintain a specific lifestyle, what are the expenses that I need my pot of dollars to cover? So we're actually going to walk through the mathematics to show you, okay, if my expenses are $25,000 that I know I need to cover to make this shift, how much money do I need to have? What if I need to replace $50,000 of expenses? What if I need to cover $75,000? Then what if I need to cover $100,000 of expenses? And what we're going to show you is the mathematics required to get to those expense covering numbers so that whatever your next endeavor is can make up the difference. And you can define what that means for you.
So we have different dollar amount of expenses that need to be covered. We also, in step 2, we talked about how to cover it. Look, a big impact besides just how much you need to cover in expenses? what's your age?
Mm-hmm.
Because
Huge.
you definitely look, all the controversy over the last few months over safe withdrawal rates and all those things. I love that this is the component where we adjust what this safe withdrawal rate is, because we've all heard of the 4%,
Sure.
the Trinity study and things like that. There are ways to take this into account so it's customized based upon your age and needs as well.
Yeah, the 4% rule is used to determine how much a retiree can withdraw from their retirement portfolio each year. It comes from a historical study that was done. It was conducted in 1994 that found there was no historical case where a 4% withdrawal rate exhausted a retirement portfolio in less than 33 years. But they were looking at traditional retirements. They were looking at folks that were retiring in their 60s. So it changed a little bit. Now, I do think there are some points of clarification we ought to make as it relates to the 4% rule. It's 4% of your portfolio at retirement. So you don't recalculate every year based off of portfolio growth or decline. So what you're essentially saying when you're using the 4% rule is, if I have $1 million at retirement, I'm going to pull out $40,000 adjusted for inflation each year. It's not like if the account goes up 50% or down 50%, I'm adjusting my withdrawal rates, because that's unrealistic. It wouldn't work that way. 4% rule also assumed an inflation adjustment, that your withdrawals would increase each year with some stated rate of inflation that you assumed. And in reality, though, and this is the part that I think is beautiful, 4% rule is great as like back of the napkin rule of thumb.
Exactly.
But it's not one size fits all.
No, I mean, a real financial plan, as you get closer, I would encourage anybody who gets into that 5 to 10 year band of being close to actual landing the airplane and walking away from your day job, you've got to be stress testing. You've got to actually go beyond just napkin math. But these things are great while you're young and you're vision casting where you want to be. I love safe withdrawal rates for that type of plan, because it's hard when you're young and you have 15, 20 years to really know where it's going to be, because we know changing just 1% here or a year or 2 years here is going to have dramatic impacts. So the reality of financial planning is you've got to be running Monte Carlo simulations. You've got to run all the different scenarios so you can take into account life changes, and you need to be serious and go beyond just doing napkin plans.
And in practice, what we do is we don't have static withdrawal rates for our clients either. They might have, for a season, it might be a 4% withdrawal rate, but then for a season, it might be 6.5%, and then for the next season, it might be 2.5%, and it varies through time. So this is not a customized plan. This is back of the napkin math. But maybe you're curious, all right, well, how do I do it? What's the mathematics behind the back of the napkin math? Well, here it is. If you just want to use the 4% rule, here's how you calculate what you need in your portfolio. You take your annual retirement expenses. What do I think I'll need in retirement? Let's say it's $50,000. You divide by 0.04. That tells you how big your portfolio needs to be. Well, how can you calculate what you can actually take out yearly? Take your retirement portfolio, multiply it times 0.04. Generally speaking, when those two numbers intersect, that's when you're at financial independence. When your retirement portfolio can substantiate the retirement living expenses you need, you would argue that you've reached the financial independence point.
Wait a minute. Don't get too far ahead of us, because this is a typical 30-year retirement.
That's right.
Somebody who's retiring at 65. That is how the 4% rule kind of with Trinity study all worked out. But as I've already previewed, FIRE movement, or people who are even part of this new FINE movement, are now, I mean, they're thinking about this in much broader terms, 40 years, 50 years, and beyond.
Certainly more than 33.
What does that actually do to the safe withdrawal rate?
Yeah, so what we said is, hey, it probably ought to be a fluctuating, it should be a fluid number based on how long you think that your retirement is going to last. So we did a money guy adjustment to it, and we said what we're going to do is we're going to lower your withdrawal percentage by 0.25%, by 0.25% for every 5 years that you retire early. Don't worry to do math, we're gonna give you the numbers. So if you wanna retire at 65, a 4% withdrawal rate works. But if you're thinking about retiring or leaving the workforce or having your portfolio cover some level of your expenses for the remainder of your life, and you want that at 55, then you got to think about a 3.5% withdrawal rate. If you want your portfolio to subsidize your living expenses starting at age 45, it's going to be a 3% withdrawal rate. And if you're someone who's 35 years old, but you want your portfolio to subsidize your current living expenses for the remainder of your life, and you want to ensure that it'll last, we think that you ought to use a safe withdrawal rate of 2.5% for that chunk of your assets to make sure that it lasts.
Yeah, I mean, when you are putting that much stress, because like we've already shared, there's a lot of life that happens when you're making this decision at 35, 45, and even 50 years of age. So you need to make sure you're taking that adjustment into the conservative assumptions as you're doing your napkin plan.
Now remember, what we're not suggesting is that a 35-year-old here is going to leave the workforce forever. We're going to show you why those numbers are difficult. What we are suggesting is that it is possible to build a pot of money that will replace a certain portion of your expenses in perpetuity. And that's what we want to educate you on. If you are thinking about your next endeavor, when can I leave the thing that I'm doing now to move to the thing that I want to be doing then? We're going to give you the numbers to be able to do that.